Hello, my name's Bridget Belgrave and I'm a trainer with the International Centre for Nonviolent Communication. I'm one of more than 100 trainers working around the world in very diverse circumstances and with a very wide range of people of all ages. The centre was founded by Marshall Rosenberg, who originated the NVC process in the 1960s in the United States. His work is distilled and has developed over the 35 years and is summed up in his recent book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Compassion. I want to make this video because I really want to make it possible for people to hear about NVC in all kinds of different ways and to have access to information that will help them decide whether they want to learn this process and develop it and bring it into their lives. This video will be in 3 parts. The first part will be about my deeper intention and vision that really inspires me to work with NVC. The second part will be an overview of the process. And the third part will be some examples of NVC in action. So one way of thinking about what NVC is that it's a way to keep connected to the flow of life, the way life moves us. We feel moved in our feelings and even more deeply in something that there isn't a word for in our English language, which is really the source of our being. We can get closest to it by identifying what we could call our present need or our present value. So right now, as I'm standing in this meadow looking at these grasses dancing in the wind, I feel a real sense of peace and of joy and lightness because I value so much the beauty of nature and the natural rhythm that's created when life is allowed to move through its beings. And I have a vision that this quality of interrelatedness and of harmonious shared rhythm is something that is possible when human beings can learn to communicate in a way that's connecting to this source of life, to the need that's alive in them in each moment. And that this creates a beauty of an interconnected pattern that will begin to be a lot more like the beauty of nature than what we see going on between human beings at the moment around the world. One of the reasons that I like to work with NVC is because I feel so sad about the way I see human beings treating each other. And sometimes I feel very angry about it too. When I see disrespect, when I see people blaming each other, when I see people hearing other people's good intentions as criticism, as judgment of themselves, and feeling insulted, even when someone else is wanting to get across something important to them. I really sometimes feel desperate that there's going to be any way that human beings can find a way to live what's possible, what could be possible, what I have a vision is possible between people. Of course, all of us know moments of that in our closer relationships. Moments where life does really work, where being with other people is great joy, and where being with one person or a group of people creates an atmosphere that links us to something that really is beyond ourselves and that is life-giving. But how many times have you got up in the morning and when someone has said something to you, "Where are the cornflakes?" you've jumped or snapped. "Well, it's not up to me to know where the cornflakes are. Why don't you look for them yourself?" How many times have, when somebody's come home and you haven't seen them for a while but you've been stressed out at the end of the day, has the first thing out of your mouth been, "Well, have you brought your homework home?" Or some other kind of disconnecting or less than harmonious way of being with that person. So with NVC, I'm not saying that we wouldn't communicate what really is the essence of such messages, but that we would communicate them in a way that honors the other person and honors the connection, and also that we would have an eye on how important it is that the priority connection, the priority in that moment is the quality of connection with the person, rather than the result that we are focused on. It's more important to me that my son respects and enjoys his relationship with me than whether that day he has his homework books with him or not. So NVC helps with this quality of interconnection that can lead to what I see as a kind of beauty and a natural shape that emerges and form that emerges between human beings when they are connected to the source of life. The interconnection I sometimes would call compassion, which is the intention that NVC is designed to serve. I like to think of compassion in a particular way as something that implies an awareness of the interconnectedness of all life. To me, compassion implies that I know that my well-being depends on your well-being, and your well-being depends on my well-being, that we're fully interconnected. It helps me to symbolize this in a certain way, showing the perspective that the nonviolent communication process encourages us to develop. Which is a perspective of caring equally for myself as for the other person. Many familiar phrases come to mind in relation to this. Such as love thy neighbour as thyself. This is quite a challenge, how to keep that equality of attention between oneself and another, so that I don't put myself before you, at the same time I don't put you before me. Because from this perspective of compassion, the perspective that the process of nonviolent communication helps us to take up more often, we're aware equally of both people. You could call it a frame, that we want to be aware that the first frame for nonviolent communication is this frame of compassion. That I look at people through this frame, I look from my heart to want to connect in this way. I like very much the immediacy of the way this is put in the Jewish tradition with this quote: "If I am not for me, then who is for me? If I am just for me, then who am I? And if not now, then when?" If not now, then when describes for me the importance of the second frame of nonviolent communication, having our attention in the present. I may know that my intention is compassion, but unless I know how to bring my attention into the present, how can I form this quality of connection that I want to form, that leads to natural giving? When my attention is in the present, I want to put it on what I would call the flow of life, what's really alive in the moment. Let's use this to symbolize the flow of life that's just going on all the time. What's alive? What's present? What's going on in the present? And NVC, being a process to do with human communication, particularly picks up the connection to this flow of life in three areas. One of them I would call connecting to myself, connecting to what's alive in me. When I've connected to myself, which is an inner process, a silent process usually, then I may choose to express myself to someone else. And when I've expressed myself, or possibly before I've expressed myself, I may choose to connect to what's alive in someone else by receiving them, receiving others, receiving what's alive in others. So this art of connecting to the flow of life in terms of what's alive in ourselves and others, expressing this alive information and receiving that quality of information from others, leads in an almost magical way to forming this quality of connection where everyone's needs can get met joyfully. One thing that I love about NVC is that it doesn't leave us there with this more specific but still rather vague information. It gives a very clear how-to information about how to make those connections. And it does this by giving clear information about what shall we focus our attention on when communicating that will lead to this quality of compassionate connection. We're all fairly familiar with what we focus on that doesn't lead to that kind of connection. There are many well-known ingredients that really disconnect people from their own hearts and from a warm and respectful connection with other people. Perhaps one of the most famous is judgment, by which I'm referring to moralistic judgment. Who's good and bad? Who's right and wrong? When we judge people in terms of what's good and bad, who's good and bad, and who is right and wrong, we're likely to disconnect from life and from developing a relationship that will really lead to joy and to nurturing. We're also familiar with how easy it is to label people. Think of what people are. I am this, you are that. We label through nationality, through nicknames, through insults. You're a chicken. And I've always been amazed how quickly labeling can lead to upset, to hurt, and even to physical violence. When I watched the film Karate Kid 3 for about the third time when my son was 10 or 11, I was very struck how this young man who'd been trained by someone really skilled in the martial arts to use the martial arts in the way they're really designed for, only for self-defense and to avoid conflict, was finally provoked by the other gang into attacking them simply by the use of a label. They said to him, "You're a chicken," and that was the thing that turned into violence. Other ingredients of language that disconnect us from life and from joy, of the joy of giving to each other, are blame and demands. When people are finding out whose fault it is and who has to do what, it's not much fun to connect. Whose fault it is, what you've got to do, and with a threat hidden behind it. If you don't do it, I'll get you. If you don't do it, I'll make sure something unpleasant happens to you. Maybe I'll just withhold my love. Maybe I'll persuade you you're a bad person. And the final ingredient I'd like to identify for now about this language that really disconnects us from each other and from our own hearts is the ingredient of no choice. When we think and talk as if we can't do something, as if something's not possible, we lose so much of the possibility, so much of the creativity that could lead to creatively nurturing each other and ourselves. So here's the information, some of the kinds of information where we habitually focus our attention much of the time when we're communicating. What I love about NVC is that it gives us another alternative. Instead of saying, well, don't do that, be compassionate, it says, don't do that. Hey, here's something else you can focus your attention on that will help you enjoy your connections with people. So the core ingredient in NVC is learning to focus attention on people's present need. What are you needing at the moment? What am I needing at the moment? By need, I would also refer to my values, what I value. I value integrity, I value respect, I value honesty. And in each moment, there's usually a need that we can identify when we learn how to do this, that's most alive and present in us at that moment. For instance, right now, I could connect to my need to share something that I value, that I enjoy, and my wish to contribute to others from my own experience, as I'm telling you about this process. And when we can connect to the need that's alive in the present, that connects us to this flow of life. We might connect to it in ourselves, as I was giving you an example just now of my present need. We might connect to it in another by focusing our attention on that. What's alive in them? What are they wanting? What are they evaluating? What are they being motivated by right now? In terms of what quality are they wanting to bring into their life? What essence? Is it a longing for beauty? Is it a longing for support? Nonviolent communication defines all needs as those that are universal to all human beings. So these are also qualities that will connect us to others, as it's something that when we express it clearly, it echoes and resounds and resonates in another person, as each of us are built from the same set of needs. Now, one of the reasons that I found nonviolent communication so helpful to myself, and now I've had the chance to share it with others, I see how helpful it is to others, is because in the way that our cultures have developed, we are rarely educated in this process of connecting to our need in the present. It's not easy to do, and it takes time to develop that ability. And nonviolent communication offers another two areas where you can focus your attention, which will help connect you to your present need, which may be more accessible to you, as a way of, first of all, connecting to it, and also sharing your humanness about it. So first of all, I'll refer to focusing your attention on your present feeling. What are you feeling right now? What emotion are you feeling? And I like the concept that your feeling arises from your need. It's something that develops and arises from your need. If your need's satisfied, you'll have comfortable feelings. When you have your need for company satisfied, you may feel happy. If your need is not satisfied, you may have more painful feelings. If your need for company is not fulfilled, you may feel upset, you may feel lonely. Depending on the circumstances, you may feel hurt. also arising from our present need, is what in NVC we call observations, which refer to what we're noticing in the outer world that's stimulating us to want to connect to a certain need or to communicate in a particular way. Usually this information refers to what we can see and what we can hear in the outer world. If I notice when I'm walking down the street someone roughly and handling another person, seeing that may activate my need for people to treat each other with respect, with care. And out from that need arises my feeling of upset when I see this happening. These three elements, the observation, feeling and need, will tell me how I am. And when I focus on this attention, information in another person, it will tell me how they are. The fourth piece of information that NVC suggests focusing attention on, which will develop the quality of connection that leads to natural giving, is information about what someone might do in the present moment that would go one step towards meeting a need. And in NVC we call this information that we want to communicate a request, whether it's my request to you, or whether I'm wondering what your request to me might be, that would go one step towards fulfilling your present need. Sometimes I refer to these four areas of attention focus, the four key ingredients of NVC. The shapes here could be said to resemble a keyhole. And when you put your attention, which is a certain kind of energy, into this keyhole, it opens the door to this quality of connection that I've been referring to. So just going back to the overview of the nonviolent communication process here. Initially, it serves this intention, a certain intention, to connect with compassion with another and with myself. To serve that intention, I bring my attention into the present. In the present, I want to connect to the flow of life. I might want to connect to myself, what's going on in me, what's alive in me. I might want to express myself or receive another. And in order to do that, I can focus my attention on these four key ingredients. What am I observing, or what are you observing in the present? What am I feeling, what are you feeling in the present? What am I needing, or valuing, or enjoying in the present? What are you needing, valuing, enjoying in the present? And what request might I be wanting to make of someone specific in the present to fulfill my need, at least one step towards fulfilling it? What request might you want to make in the present? And you find that from each of these stations we can focus on this key information. So when I'm silently connecting to myself, I can connect through these four pieces of information. When I'm wanting to connect to what's alive in others, to receive others, I can do that through these four pieces of information. When I'm wanting to express myself, I can express these four pieces of information. And it's the exchange of this core information with a degree of clarity and accuracy that fulfills our intention to connect with compassion. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to use language when we want to communicate around these four pieces of information, because the structures of our language are all, very many of them are based around communicating in terms of this black and white information from this dualistic universe where people are either good or bad, where things are right or wrong, where either you are something or you're not something, either you're clever or you're stupid, where things become fixed and static, where labels lead to self-fulfilling prophecies. A great deal of the thinking and communicating that's been done in the last several thousand years in most cultures has been with attention focused on that information. So it's not surprising that our language often reverts us to this kind of thinking if we haven't really learned how to use language in a way that clarifies what's alive in us. So to learn nonviolent communication involves learning on two levels. One is this level I've been describing here, of what to focus our attention on. And the other is learning how language can support us communicating this information and receiving it from others. And what language traps to avoid that would be likely to increase the chances of disconnection, of misunderstanding. After the break, I'll be giving some examples that will demonstrate these two different kinds of language in action. In this part, I'll be describing the NVC process in action and demonstrating some dialogues. Luckily, I've got some assistants with me, some special assistants, that are similar to those that many NVC trainers use around the world. We like to use these assistants because they seem to help people learn, and also they bring fun into our teaching. This is one of my assistants, who I call a jackal. And I use this puppet to demonstrate when people are not using the NVC process. And so, for fun, we refer to the kind of language that disconnects people from their hearts and from each other as jackal language. The language of judgment, label, blame, demands, and denying choice. Talking as if there's no choice. My other assistant is a giraffe puppet. We use the giraffe puppet to symbolize when a person is using the NVC process. So we like to refer to the NVC process, sometimes for fun, as giraffe language. Giraffe language, which has those components of focusing attention on observations, feelings, needs, and requests. The information that connects people to the flow of life and fulfills the kind of exchange that leads to a compassionate connection. All of us speak both these languages. And it's not only a matter of speaking, it's how we think, how we speak, and how we hear. It's all part of giraffe consciousness, or the kind of consciousness that leads us to connect in a compassionate way. And then at other moments, we can be thinking jackal thoughts, speaking in a jackal language, and hearing what's coming towards us through our jackal consciousness, which would mean really whatever is said, we hear it in terms of judgments, blame, criticism, threats, demands, and the other ingredients of jackal language. Moment by moment, we shift from one to the other. What I'd like to do now is demonstrate 3 different dialogues, showing what happens when people are in these different kinds of consciousness. moment by moment. So we're going to start with a dialogue with two people who at that moment are in jackal consciousness. Here they are. I'd like you to meet them. This is Mike. Hello, hello. And this is Maria. Hello. Now at this moment, Maria's just coming back into the house, having got home at the end of the day's work. They live in a narrow street, but it's not that easy to park. Oh, Mike, you never believe what just happened. Oh, what happened? I was trying to park the car and I don't know what happened. I've never done it before, but I reversed. When I was reversing, I've reversed into the neighbour's car, and it's like it's all dented. You idiot! You've done what? Well, I reversed into their car. I mean, I didn't mean to. God, you're the worst driver. I've always said you were the worst driver. You shouldn't be allowed to drive. So I just wanted you to taste what would that be like when you've come in. Poor Maria here, she's come in this situation, and what does she hear back? She hears labels. You idiot! And she hears this kind of thinking in terms of there's something wrong with her. You never were any good at driving. I shouldn't have allowed you to drive that car. So now I'd like you to see what would happen if at the moment that Maria came in, Mike was in the mode of giraffe consciousness. Oh, Mike, you'll never guess what happened. You'll never guess what happened. What is it? You seem really worried. I was trying to park the car, and I've never done it before, but I just reversed it, and I reversed right into the neighbour's car, and it's all dented. Whoa, you seem really upset about it. Well, of course I'm so upset. I mean, oh, God knows what the insurance bill was going to be, and we just had such a big bill to pay this month already. And I just don't know, and I can't think how it happened. Wait a minute. It sounds like you really need to settle down for a moment. Yeah, I'm just all shaky. Here, have a seat. Don't you want to sit down for a minute and you can tell me more about it? Oh, okay. So, you can see the difference immediately when Maria comes in an upset state. What Mike focuses on is her present observation, feeling, and need. So, when we're in the NVC process, often we're receiving others on the flow of life before we express ourselves. And in this case, Mike was receiving Maria by focusing attention on what were her observations, feelings, needs, and requests. So he said things like, "You seem very worried about it," guessing her feeling. And then when she talked more, he said, "It sounds like you really need to settle down," keeping track of her present need, or guessing what her present need might be. She might have said, No, I just want to take you outside and show you." And then he would have guessed wrong. But in this process of NVC, it doesn't matter at all if you guess wrong, because by guessing, you're showing that you're wanting really to connect to what's in the other person's heart. And if you guess inaccurately, then that will help them get in touch more accurately and also let you know what is important to them. So if this was an inaccurate guess, you'd like to settle down, wouldn't you? Why don't you sit down? No, I want to take you outside and show you. Then you get the new information. Oh, okay, you want to show me, let's go and look at it together. Maybe Maria needs to share the experience first and get a bit more information about what's happened. But in this case, she said yes to them. Gosh, do you want to settle down? You want to sit down for a minute and tell me more about it? Oh, yes. So in this case, the guess was accurate, which created a connection that led to some action that was going to meet Maria's need. Because Mike chose to receive Maria, he heard what she was going on with her first. Of course, later he might choose to express himself and say something like, "Whoa, I'm really amazed, because I wasn't aware that, it would be so just 1 minute to the next, you can just make a mistake like that. I mean, a person can make a mistake like that." This feeling of amazement and something he wasn't really aware of, how quickly an accident can happen. So there's Mike and Maria, the difference when one of them is in giraffe consciousness. And I hope that also helped you to see that the NVC process works, even if only one person is using it. It doesn't require both people to be trained in the process. to bring about this shift towards more life-connected information. Because when we connect to another in this way, it also helps them to connect to themselves in a more satisfying way, and it leads towards healing of pain and resolution of conflict, and also deepening of enjoyable or warm experiences and connections. Now I'd like to demonstrate another example. This time, let's have Susan and Sam. We'll start them both off in jackal consciousness, just get a taste of that. Now Susan is a mother, and Sam is her 15-year-old son. And Sam has promised that he's going to be home by midnight, even though he's gone out with his friends. And the last twice he went out with his friends, he wasn't back till 2 in the morning at the weekends. And his mother wasn't happy at all, especially not on Sunday night, just before school starts, on the Monday morning. And so this time she's made him promise, as a jackal, she was rather threatening about this. If he didn't promise to be back by midnight, then he couldn't go. She was going to try and assert her power over him, which is a very jackal attitude towards how you get people to do things. Well, so Sam gave her a jackal answer, which in this case was yes. When you say yes in jackal mode, it often means, I'm not planning on doing that at all, but I'll say yes for the time being, although it might not mean that. But at the moment we're going to pick this story up. It's 2 in the morning and Sam's coming home, trying to be quiet of course, but his mum is away. Where the hell do you think you've been? It's 2 in the morning, don't you know what time it is? Oh Mum, just cool it, it doesn't matter, I'll be up in the morning, it's just for God's sake. Well, I mean, there you were, it's typical of you, you were lying to me about what time you'd come back, willfully, just so that you could get your own way. So here we have how the dialogue starts when we're in jackal language. Now if we actually think what the mum's wish might be, that the situation would improve, that the son would act in a responsible way in the future, we might see this isn't going to really help very much. What we've heard so far is a blameful tone of voice. Where the hell have you been? As if there's something bad and wrong with this one. And also some beginnings of some labelling about lying and saying things that imply a certain judgment. You really lied to me earlier, didn't you? You just said that to get your own way. So when the puppet speaks like that, and Susan, the puppet, speaks like that, she's using this label component of NVC, which also is likely to disconnect her. Okay, now the amazing thing is that sometimes even 15-year-olds, in fact all of us when we were 15 at different times used this process as well. So right now we'll have Sam being the one that's using the process. Okay, so here he is, he's coming in. Where the hell do you think you've been? Don't you know what time it is? It's 2 in the morning. Oh, Mum, are you remembering that I said I'd be back at midnight? So Sam immediately focuses on what he thinks is triggering her communication. He's heard about the 2 in the morning, but it's the combination of that with what they said earlier that's causing her upset. He's guessing. Yes, I am. You said you'd be here at midnight. You were just lying to me. Oh, sounds like you're really upset. You'd like people to do what they say they're going to do. And Sam's trying to guess what her feeling and need is, without thinking of anyone as right or wrong at the moment. Yes, I am. I would like people, and especially you, for once, to do what you say you're going to do. You never do. Now, for a moment there, that you never do almost flipped Sam into his jackal consciousness. A thought flashed through his mind of yesterday when he said he'd help with the washing up, and he actually did, and she didn't even say thank you. But he remembers to stay connected to what's going on in the present in her, because he wants to really hear what's upsetting her before expressing himself. So, Mum, sounds like you would have liked me to be more honest earlier. I guess honesty is so important to you. Well, yes it is, Sam, because, I mean, what's the point? Otherwise I can ask you things, and if you tell me what you're going to do, I mean, I'll never know. I don't know where you are. I've been worried sick. So you've been a bit scared, Mum. You're really wanting to be sure I was okay. Yeah, I thought perhaps you'd had an accident or something. It's been terrible the last 2 hours. I haven't been able to even think. I got so worried. So Sam's connecting to what's in the heart of his mother now. And you notice how now she's connecting also more to her own worry and her own wish for his safety, rather than to what she began with, which is blaming and labelling the other person. So whichever person is the one that switches into giraffe consciousness, they can bring about a change in the dialogue that moves people towards the kind of information that will reconnect them to life and to a compassionate connection. So, for the third example, I'd like to pick a teacher and a child. The child is called Joe, and the teacher is called Mrs. Jellyneck. And I want to show you this example because it's important to realise that the jackal language of judgment and labels applies equally whether we're using judgment of a positive kind or a negative kind, whether we're calling someone good, wonderful, brilliant, or stupid, disruptive, annoying. So now we're going to see what happens when Mrs. Jellyneck is really thrilled with some of the work that Joe's done. Let's imagine Joe is about 10 years old and has been asked to write a story and has written a certain story that Mrs. Jellyneck enjoyed. And this is how she tells Joe that she enjoyed it. Joe, that's a fantastic story. I'm giving you A+ for that. I really think you're so good at story writing. You should be a writer one day. So now you notice what she's done is that she's given him a judgment of the story. You're fantastic. And she's told him what she imagines he is. He is a writer. He should be a writer. So my worry is that this will not be as satisfying to Sam as some other kinds of information she might give him. And in fact, it might even lead him off on a trail that many of us have been on, of doing what we're good at and what other people think we would be good at, rather than doing what we really love to do. Sometimes it takes people till halfway through their lives to realise that they're not doing what they love to do, they're doing what they're good at. And this can be the result of being praised generously for what we're good at. So good, that story, Sam. I really think you should carry on with English and do, maybe this will be your career, you could be a writer. I just think it's fantastic stuff. So I wonder what Mrs. Jellyneck might have said to Sam if she was in giraffe consciousness. Sam, here's your story. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Jellyneck. Now, I noticed that you wrote 6 whole pages here, Sam. Yes, I sat up all night. I got so excited with it. So you notice already Sam's now giving her some actual life-connected information about his feeling. Well, I'm really impressed, Sam, when I see all those pages and also the effort that you tell me you put into it. I'm so impressed how much you put into that. I wonder, did you really enjoy writing that? So now she's more interested in connecting to the joy in it than into judging it. Yes, at first I thought it was going to be boring as hell, but once I started, I really got into it, Mrs. Jellyneck. In fact, my mum got quite cross because she came in at 1 in the morning and I was still up writing it, but when she saw what I was doing, she seemed to think it was okay, and I finished off. And I really did enjoy it, Mrs. Jellyneck. I never really enjoyed writing a story so much. Well, I'm interested to hear that, so she shares with him her feeling. Because when I saw all the different ways you'd used language, and I saw the jokes you put in it, and the dialogue you made, and oh yeah, that dialogue, that was fun. It just seemed to come into my head. I don't know where it came from. Well, I was really touched by that. I just love the humour. So that she's talking now about her feeling, being touched, and her need that was met, which was humour. And I love the variety of it as well. Another need that was met. And also I really like it when I see that power of imagination. So her value, how she values the development of a child's imagination. And the way that someone's able to imagine what it would be like to be so many different characters. You had 4 or 5 characters there. You seem to really be able to think your way into them. Well, yeah, Mrs. Jelinek, one of them I was thinking about my brother, and I really thought about what it would be like for him, and so I based that one character on him, you see. So Mrs. Jelinek is giving Sam information here that encourages him, really, to something that he loves and enjoys, and isn't based on whether she thinks he was better than someone else, or good at it, or bad at it. It's also not giving a kind of praise that has an implicit threat in it, where if he doesn't do it as well next time, he won't get such a good mark. It's giving him the sense of his own kind of power, his power to choose and his power to enjoy what he does. So that I hope that those three examples have given you a sense of how when one person shifts into giraffe consciousness, as I'm calling it playfully, or into that intention to connect with others compassionately, then that begins to alter the quality of connection in such a way that the values or needs that are involved in the situation, whether they're met or unmet, will be recognized more easily and connected with more fully. And then as the communication continues beyond the moment when those values and needs are recognized, the actions that arise are much more likely to lead to fulfillment of those needs and an honouring and respecting of those values. Sometimes hearing the process for the first time, it sounds unusual or strange or complicated. But I'd like you to bear in mind that many activities, when we first learn them, may give us a sense of that awkwardness or what we call unnaturalness, which I would say is really more to do with what we're used to, with what's habitual. So that when you start to do anything in a different way, there's a period where it may sound unfamiliar, and it may have sounded unfamiliar to you. Like learning any language, NVC develops fluency as you go along. And also, I would like to make a distinction between using the process in a classical way, showing clearly the 4 different steps, and using it colloquially, where we know that our attention is focused on those 4 key ingredients of the process. However, we're communicating in a way that verbally is much looser and freer than when we're verbally signalling each of those key ingredients. In the examples I gave you, there was a mixture of the two. I wanted to make it fairly clear for you which ingredients I was demonstrating. So I'd like you to understand that as your fluency would develop with NVC, if you were to go on and learn this process, it would begin to sound more and more natural to you, both because it would be more familiar and more comfortable, and also because of an ability to increase the variety of words you use and to build new structures of language that make it easier to connect with other people in this way. I'd like to finish by reading you a short poem written in 550 BC by Lao Tzu. Because NVC is nothing new. The ingredients have all been known for a long time, and many of the central concepts and intentions are present in all kinds of writing, in ancient wisdom, in the religions of the world. Sometimes although I understand that the ingredients of NVC have been known for a long time, one thing that I would say though is that the way those ingredients, especially the key ingredients, fit together is something that NVC offers in a unique way. This thread that links us so that we're aware that something's stimulating us, stimulating a certain feeling, that the feelings are rising from a certain need, but once we're connected to the need, we can go one step further and identify a request that will go one step towards meeting the need. This thread that links these ingredients together, I find one of the invaluable parts of knowing the NVC process. It provides a map at any moment where not only can I identify what I'm focusing my attention on at that moment, but I also have a route to go, to travel, that I know will lead towards the quality of connection, that will lead to natural giving, and people enjoying each other and life a great deal more. Some say that my teaching is nonsense. Others call it lofty, but impractical. But to those who have looked inside themselves, this nonsense makes perfect sense. And to those who put it into practice, this loftiness has roots that go deep. I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and in thoughts, you return to the source of being. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord with the way things are. Compassionate toward yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. If you'd like to know more about the process of nonviolent communication, or about trainings that are available in your area, you can connect with the website for the Centre for Nonviolent Communication, www.cnvc.org.